Welcome, everybody. I'm Dr. Dina Kurzweil, the director of the ETI and an associate professor here at USIS in the School of Medicine. And I'm pleased to introduce today Designing with Google Slides with Mr. Brandon Henry and Doug Onofru from our Education and Technology Innovation Support Office. So take it away, Brandon and Doug.
Thank you, Dina. Okay, so by the end of this session, we're going to go over creating new slides and new documents in Google Slides. And what we're going to be doing is designing a flyer using Google Slide tools. And then we'll show you how to save and print that flyer. Even though we're showing how to design a flyer kind of thing, you can also create handouts and other print documents with this. But these tools that we're showing and these design things also carry over to your slide design. So you can do the same thing with your slides. So I'll let Doug lead us off for today.
Okay, so before we actually design a flyer for you, there are several benefits to using slides for something like this. First and foremost is Google Slides is free. There are no expensive licenses for Adobe apps like Photoshop and InDesign. And if you're fairly well versed with slides already, then you're not going to have the steep learning curve like you would with the more complicated Adobe apps. And another good thing about using slides is that you can easily share your files with others, and they can work on them with you, so it's a collaborative tool as well. So before we go ahead and create a flyer, there are some design considerations to keep in mind. First, be concise. The less text, the better. This not only makes for faster messaging because it makes it easier to read, but less text also gives you more room for imagery and design elements, which are more eye-catching than text. Next, you want to think about the basics of type hierarchy, which basically means that you size and arrange text in order of their importance. Usually the headline is the biggest, and more supportive subheading text is the next largest, followed by the least important information, which is usually the smallest. Now, if you're creating a flyer, you definitely want the headline large so that people can read it from a distance, and if they're interested, they come closer and get all the smaller details. And speaking of which, you definitely want to use fonts that are readable. You don't want to use fancy or complex script fonts that are usually pretty hard to discern from a distance. And you also want to use fonts that fit the tone for the design. For instance, if you're designing for a serious topic, you don't want to use whimsical fonts like Comic Sans or Lobster, and you're going to want to stick with the cleaner, more classic fonts. And when you do use fonts, you only really want to use one or two, 3 at the absolute most, not a ton, because it just makes things look cluttered. Now, what's good with slides is it has a lot of good fonts with various weights. There are bold, regular, light, extra bold, things like that. So you can use one font with various weights to give a contrast and variety with the same font, and this helps you keep your design more cohesive too. Now, if you're designing for print, either a flyer or a handout, you definitely want to make sure that the images are high resolution enough or large enough so that when they print out they aren't blurry and pixelated and look terrible. You want them nice, crisp, and bold. And you're going to want to make sure that you're allowed to use any images in your flyer. And you're going to want to find these usable images on government sites, maybe some stock sites if you have an account, or some royalty-free sites. Now, usually with those sites, attribution is more of a courtesy than a necessity. And for the most part, your flyers aren't going to be scrutinized by any copyright holder. But it's just always a good rule of thumb to make sure that you can use any images and that you attribute any images you use properly. So let's get to it. Here's a flyer that we worked out for this brown bag, and we're going to be recreating it for you here using slides and walking you through it step by step. And for that, I'm going to hand it over to Brandon Henry.
Thank you, Doug. I've basically taken that same slide, and this is kind of a reference slide just so we can refer back to this. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this content over here on the right-hand side, this plain old text, and we're going to create this flyer with it. And like I said, all of these tools and everything, this is all part of Google Slides, and you can create your slides this way as well. But right now we're just showing kind of how to do a flyer, something a little different. Now, the first thing that we're going to want to do is change our slide dimensions so that it fits a printable page, so 8.5 by 11. To do that, basically, when you open Google Slides, it's in slide format, this horizontal format. So we're going to go up here to File, And I'm just going to highlight where file is up here in the top right. And I know I can't really zoom in too much for the menu windows, but I'll try to pop the screen a little bigger when I get into designing it. But let's go to File. And then down here under Page Setup, you can change the dimensions of your page. And if you're trying to follow along, that's great. But also remember, we're recording this too, so you can always go back and watch the video to see this. So under Page Setup, I'm going to click on the drop down and I'm going to go to Custom. And from here, I'm going to change this to 8.5 by 11. That's kind of your standard paper size. So 8.5 times 11. I want to make sure that's set to inches, and I'm going to hit Apply. Now, immediately you can see that my slide dimensions over here on the right and on my desktop here have changed. That's perfectly fine because we're going to actually be creating our flyer on slide 2 here. I'm going to use this as our reference. So you can see on my image, and let me make this a little bit larger so you can see the graphic. You can see that we have a few shapes and we have a photo inside of this shape. And then we've got our text and some highlighting thing and the USIS logo. And I'm going to show you how to get to all of that right now. So on my next slide, let me move this to fit on my screen. I'm coming up here. If your slides are kind of not showing up right, or they're too large or too small, up here at the top of the screen, you can see you can zoom in. So I'm kind of tapping my thing here. You can see where I'm at. And I'm going to choose that to fit. So that fits my whole page now to the window. Okay, so let me just jump back here real quick. We've got a shape, we've got a photo, we've got a couple circles over here. So let's start with importing an image. If you've never done this before, you're going to go up to the top where it says Insert. You can click Insert and go to Image. And then you have a whole bunch of selections here. I'm going to upload mine from a computer. I actually saved this image before from one of the free image websites. I believe I got it from Unsplash, but there's a whole bunch of them out there. You can just, as Doug said, find something that's copyright free and grab that. I've already got mine saved here, so I'm going to click on it. And it brings it in to my page, and I've got a big square photo. Now, you know, if you want to just leave it like that, you can, and put the text below it. That's certainly acceptable. But since I promised all the works here, we're going to go in and we're going to design this just like I created this sample here. So when you have a photo, we're going to create what's called a mask. So we're going to add a shape, and then we're going to stick that photo inside of the shape. And to do that, Google Slides has a tool up here. Normally, if you click it, it's called the crop tool. And if you just click on the crop tool, you can, you know, resize kind of the boundaries of your image and crop it down. But what we want to do is click on the little arrow that's right next to the crop image tool. And when I click that, I get a variety of shapes that I can choose from. And I'm going to choose the circle. And when I do that, it kind of tries to fit the circle into the whole image that I have. So if I would have had a perfectly square image, it would have given me like a perfect circle. But since I had a rectangular image, it starts with an oval. And we can fix that. I'm going to double click on the image, and you can see how the border sort of changed to this black cropping tool now. And if I grab one of the edges of this crop tool, my arrow, I don't know if you can see it on there or not, but the arrow kind of changes to a left and right. If I move that, the shape now changes. And you can see how it's kind of changing to a circle. And I'm not going to be super precise on this. I'm going to get it pretty close to a circle. And if I click off of the image or on the tool, anywhere on my slide, you can see now I have my image inside of the circle. Now it's off center. I don't like that. So I'm going to click it again, and I'm double click it this time. And you'll notice that I have two kind of boxes to work with. I can click and drag the photo around. You can see how the photo is kind of moving within that circle now. And as I move it, some red lines kind of pop up on the screen. That's Google's way of telling you, hey, that's the center of the image combined with that circle. So I'm going to leave it right there, click off, and now I have my image perfectly inside of a circle shape. So that's great. That's our first step. Now what we want to do is, you know what, I forgot to mention, when you're printing these documents, Printers all operate a little bit differently from each other. Some of them print all the way to the edges. Some of them leave like a huge margin at the top and bottom. And as you're designing your flyer, you kind of have to kind of think about your printer. And if you haven't done that before, it may take a little testing to see where your margins are on your printer. What I like to do though, is as I'm creating things in Google Slides, is create some margins that I can work within that I think that my printer will work within. So if you see here on the side, I have some rulers on the top and the bottom. If you don't have those, I believe you can find them under View and Show Ruler. So View up here in the menu, Show Ruler. And if it's checked, then great, your ruler should be there. If it's not, then go ahead and click it to turn them on. And then what you can do is if you click your mouse, I'm kind of have my mouse inside the ruler there. If I click and drag that down, you can see how it's bringing a line down for me. If I move that down to 0.25 or 1/4 of an inch, I now have kind of a boundary that I can visually see. That's not going to print, but it's there for me to work with. I'm going to do the same for the sides. We'll just do quarter inch all the way around, and that will help us kind of constrain our design to this square, and hopefully everything will print. Now my printer kind of leaves a bit more of a gap at the bottom, so I'm going to do a 1/2 inch at the bottom for mine. Since it's 11, I'm going to go up 1/2 an inch, so it'd be 10.5. And now I have a bottom sort of margin that I can work within. This way, if I don't, put any text on the outside and it gets cut off from my printer, I know that it's going to print if I keep everything within this box here. Okay, so we have our shape, we have our margins ready to go now. If I go back to the previous design, we can see that I have it kind of colored, kind of bluish, give it a little style, and I've got some shapes behind that circle as well, and some shadows here that we'll do all that right now. So the first thing we want to do is colorize this photo. And I absolutely encourage everyone to experiment with this. You're not going to break anything. You can go through and click all the buttons and do everything and make it look as crazy as you want. This is your design, but please, just feel free, have fun with it and see what it actually, all the things that Google Slides can do. You might find some styles that you really like and you want to continue to use those in other slides that you have. But what we're going to do is I'm going to right click now on my image, and I'm going to go down on the menu to Format Options. What that's going to do is going to bring up a little window here over on the right hand side, and you can see that there's a bunch of different options to choose. If you wanted to precisely position your thing on your screen, on your document, you can do that. But we want to make this kind of green, kind of like this flyer here. So what I'm going to do is go under Recolor. And if I click the little drop down arrow right next to Recolor, it'll give me another drop down window, which if I click on that, now you can see it gives you a bunch of kind of preset color corrections, if you will, for your image. I'm going to choose this kind of teal green down here at the bottom. I kind of like that color. And I'm going to click on that. It's called Dark 7. Obviously, that made my graphic a little dark. So I want to adjust that to make it a little bit brighter. So what I can do is go to the adjustments now, right here below Recolor. And I'm going to bring that brightness up with this slider. And you can see how my image now is getting brighter or darker depending on where I move the slider. So I'm going to make this one about 40%. I think that's probably a good setting for this one. And you can also click on the little up and down arrows to go 1% at a time if you're kind of like me and a little twitchy and can't quite get it on the number there. So I'm going to set that to 40%. And again, you can play around with the opacity and the contrast. It's completely up to you. For this example, I'm going to stick with that. And then on our demo, like I said, I have a little bit of a drop shadow, and that helps kind of take that image and separate it from the rest of the items on the background. So let's add that drop shadow. If I click on my image again, you can see drop shadow here. Notice that there's a checkbox with this one. So I want to make sure that that's checked right over here on the screen. And then click on the drop down, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit so you can see what's going on. Right now, it doesn't look like there's anything on there. That's because my distance is very small. So as I move this distance slider up, you can see now that a drop shadow is kind of growing. And it's kind of like where the light is or how far off the page it is. So let's set this back to, I think I'm going to try about 20 pixels. And I'm going to change the angle to, let's say, 60. So it looks like the light's coming from the top left. And then we're going to turn this opacity down a little bit because I don't want it too terribly dark. So let's make that about 30. These are all numbers I'm kind of making up. There's no rhyme or reason to these. I'm just kind of going by what I think looks good. So let's set this to 20. Nice subtle one. And then the last one is blur radius. You can see I have kind of a sharp edge there. If I move this out, it makes it like really soft. So we're going to go with kind of a soft shadow here. So we'll say 15. That's pretty good. All right. Now, I mean, I have a pretty decent graphic going on right there. I could add the text to that and call it a day if I wanted to. But again, we've got more shapes to go here. And so we want to make this look as nice as we can. And so let's go and add these yellow circles now to our design. Again, I'm going to go up to the shape tool, which is right up here in the toolbar. And I'm going to go to shapes and I'm going to go to circle. Now this time when I draw a circle, I'm going to hold down the shift key and that's going to actually force it to stay as a perfect circle. If I just start drawing, notice how it makes an oval. Now I'm going to click the shift key and now I have a perfect circle going here. Okay. So I'm going to draw out kind of a smaller circle. This is just kind of a little enhancement to go with my shapes. And I'm going to move it over kind of to the position that I had it on this one. Now, got a couple things going on here. I have an outline on the circle. My circle's gray, and it's on top of my image, which I don't want. So how do we fix all that? I'm going to click on the circle. And then up here in the toolbar, these are kind of your shape tools. You can see the fill color, the border color, the border weight, which is kind of the line thickness for your circles. And then if you wanted to do something fancy, you could do dashes and dots and things like that for your lines also. But for this particular shape right here, I'm going to click on the border color because I don't want a border. And I'm going to go down and click transparent. And that's going to turn that color off. So I got rid of the outline, which is great. And now I'm going to click on the shape again, and this time I'm going to go to my fill color, and I'm going to choose kind of a light yellowish color. Okay, so now I still have that shape on top of my graphic, which I do not want, but it's easy enough to fix. I'm going to right click on the shape, and it brings up a bunch of options here, and I can go to order on the list. And then over here, it kind of flies out a little window and I can say send to back. And that'll send that all the way back behind all the images. Everything that would basically, anything that's on the page, if I had text or anything else stacked on here, send to back, we'll put it on the very last layer. And then, you know, same with send backwards or send forwards, it'll bring it up layer at a time. But right now we're going to do send it all the way to the back. And now I want to add these two little circles up here just to kind of balance that out. So I'll go back to my design. I can draw those shapes out again if I wanted to, or I could also click on this circle and copy and paste. And then I'd have a circle about that same size. So if I do edit copy and then edit paste, or you can also use the keyboard shortcuts, which it's going to force me to do. So Control V to paste it. Now I have two circles, but notice that it put that one on top again. So anytime you copy and paste something, it's going to put it on the very top layer. So just kind of keep that in mind if things are sort of getting out of order for you. So these shapes at the top on this document were kind of outlines, if you will. So let's go do that to here. Now, opposite of what I did before, I want the fill color to be transparent, and I want the outline color to be that yellow. And right now it's like really thin. I don't even know if you can see that on the screen. So let's make that thicker. I'm going to go over here now to my border weight, which is up here right next to the border color. And I'm going to make that big. I'll make that 24. And now I've got a nice circle that you can see with the rest of them. I'm going to make that just a little tiny bit bigger. And then I'm going to, again, right click and send that to the back. All right, so that's good. I could stop right there if I wanted to, or I could copy this. Let's do that. Let's copy and paste that circle. And we're going to make that a little bit smaller so it fits inside that first circle. And then move it. And notice how the red lines show up again. That's telling me that it's lining up in the center of different things on my screen. So I want to select both of these because I only want these two circles to be lined up perfectly in the center. And so from here, there's not a thing on the screen to align it, but I can go to, I believe it's under Arrange, the Arrange menu, and then Align, and then I can do Center. And now I've got these two shapes lined up perfectly. And I'm going to grab these two. And whenever I move these now, I want them to be together. I don't want to accidentally grab one and oh, darn it, now they're not aligned. So I'm going to undo that. I can select both of these circles. I'm holding down the Shift key when I click it. And then I believe I can do Group by right-clicking and coming down here to Group. Now, whenever I click either one of those rings, notice how they both are selected, and I can move those around wherever I want. So I have a grouped shape here. So let's move this back up here in kind of the position that we want it, and then move that to the back. So again, I'm going to right click, then to back. And now I have this kind of graphic element that I can move around wherever I want. But again, if I move individual pieces, now it kind of breaks my design. So let's undo all of that. And again, I can group everything here. Right click, come down here to group. And now whenever I select anything in this graphic, it selects all of it. And now I can move this around as one element on my design. So now I've got kind of the graphic part of my design completed. So now we need to add the text and kind of get everything in position where we want it. I've copied the text right here and pasted it. So what I want to do though is there are ways to like take this whole text block and, you know, set up the sizes and everything. I find that to be a little bit more difficult as a beginner to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab the pieces that I want, the text that I want, and just work with those individually. So let's start with the word designing. On this flyer, I have it kind of in a black background with white text. So let's just worry about that. Right now, I'm going to highlight that and copy that text and come back over here to my flyer. And I'm just going to hit paste. And it should give me a box with my word designing in it. Okay. So we want this to be the headline. So as Doug was saying earlier, you want a hierarchy on your design. So as you know, if this is a flyer on the wall or on a bulletin board somewhere and you're walking by from 20 feet away, you want to be able to look, or you want your users to look at that flyer and be drawn to it. You want them to see the headline first that says, oh, well, maybe I want to go read what the rest of that says, and it brings them in. So I'm going to make this text much larger than it is right now. You can kind of see over here on the left-hand side the difference in sizes that we have. So let's go to my flyer, and I'm going to highlight this text. And the first thing I want to do is I want my headline to be big and bold. So I'm going to do all caps for this one. I'm going to retype this in all caps. So designing. Okay. And obviously that's not big enough. And so let's make that really big. And on your slides, if the size isn't showing up here at the top, you can click these three little dots right here to give you more options for your text. So I can come over here to the size, the font size, and I'm going to change this to 80. I'm going to make it really big. So I'm going to just click the word 20 there, and I'm going to type 80 on my keyboard. And so now it kind of like made my box, you know, kept the box size, but it broke up my text. But that's okay. I can just move this over here like this and get it to show up correctly. And I can resize the box around my text. Now, on my on my reference one, this is white text on a black background. So let's change that. If I click on the box, again, I can go up to my shape fill color right up here and set that to black. I'm going to click on this little black color patch, and it made the box black. And same with the text. I can highlight the text now. But notice that there's no text color up here. Again, if you click on the three dots, excuse me, it'll give you more options. So I can click on text color and change that now to white. And then also down here, actually the font name is right here. I'm going to change this one to Oswald just because that's part of my demonstration here. And I'm going to make that bold. So now we have our box, we have our text, we have the colors are correct, but it's not really fitting in the box quite right. If I wanted to, I could kind of drag this over here, but if you get too close, it cuts off the G. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the box kind of to the size I want it. And then I'm going to change my text to align to the center of the box. And to do that, again, not on the screen, so I have to click my three dots again. And then I can just go to alignment and change the alignment to the center. Now it's a little bit more balanced, looks a little better. I don't know if you noticed, but on the alignment box under the drop down, there's also these three icons down below. And one's like pointing an arrow up, one's in the middle, and one's at the bottom. That is the alignment of your text to the box. So right now, you can't really tell because I have the box at the right size, but if I made this box a little bit larger vertically, you can see that the text is at the top. Well, I really want that text to be in the middle. So if I click this and click on this text align to the middle, it moves my text now. Now it's perfectly centered in this box. So whatever size I make this box, if I made it bigger, it stays right there in the center, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to come back over here and kind of fit it about to the size that I want, which is good. And then let's get this in place. We have this overlapping up here on the graphic. And so we want all of our design elements to work together. So we'll just move it right up here. Next, we're going to add the words with Google Slides. I don't necessarily need to copy and paste that. I can just type that in. So I'm going to go up here to my text box, or add text, which is this kind of the TwT text box. And I'll just draw out a box that's about the size of that black box. And then I'm going to say for Google Slides. And then I'm going to, you have to make the font and the size and everything the way you want it. So I'm going to come up here to my font, change that to Oswald. I'll do semi-bold. And then I'm not entirely sure, sometimes you have to kind of play with the text size to get it to fit, but I want that to fit exactly in the same spot there. Since I pre-did this earlier, I already know it's going to be 40, I think is what I did. Oh, 60, excuse me. So I'll type 60 in here and then just kind of get my box the right size. Nope, that's not 60. I bet you that is 40. I wrote it down wrong. So let's try 40. Nope, that's not it either. So, all right. So it's one of those things where, you kind of play around a little bit. I'm going to hit the plus button, and then I can just kind of inch it up to the spot that I want. And you can see kind of the highlight there lines up. So that's where I want it. And then I want this text to be solid black. Right now it's kind of a grayish color, but I want it to be that same black color. So let's change the color to the same black. And now we've got that set up. And now I can move this around exactly like I did before and have that kind of headline together. So now I've got this and I've got this. If I want to, I can do shift click and group those two again. And now my headline will move Made me a liar there, Google. There we go. I accidentally clicked on just the top movement here. So let's move this over where we want it. Put it right in here. All right, so we've got a great start for a flyer right now. So we're looking pretty close to what we had before. Oh, that's why it didn't fit, because I did 4 Google Slides instead of with. So let's do that just to be consistent. And I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so it fits. There we go. All right, so now we're pretty close to what we have here. All right, now we need to add the body text. That's the rest of the content. I'm just going to copy this and paste it and basically do kind of the same thing that I did with the headline, just adjust the boxes and the flyer and the text, everything wherever I want it. We've got that going right here. I think this one, I made that graphic quite a bit smaller compared to what I have here. This is a lot larger, so I could click that and resize the whole thing just by grabbing the corner after selecting the graphic, the little corner thing, and making it a little bit smaller. And that will give us a little bit more room to grab the right thing here. Let's try that again. And well, text is a little funny. It's not wanting to cooperate. There it goes. I had to kind of shift click in there to get it. The text boxes, it allows you to move it around a little bit more. Okay, so we'll get that. That gives us a little more room down here for our text. And we'll put that where we want it. And then the final thing we need is our date right here. So July 30, 2024. This is going to be the same thing that we did when we created the designing word up here with the text box. So this time I'm going to paste this in. And with this box, a text box only comes in as a square. So if I were to, I could just make the background black if I wanted to, like this, but it would be a square. And that's probably okay, but I don't want it to be a square. I wanted it to be this kind of rounded box. So I'm going to have to add a shape behind there and then put them all together. So if I go back to my design, let's draw a shape. There's actually a rounded rectangle shape already pre-made in here. And so we can make that kind of the size that we want, change our colors just like we did before. We don't need an outline for that one because it's a black square. You wouldn't see it. All right, and then we know we're going to make our text white so that it shows up on the black. So again, up here to the 3 dots, change my text to white. And then I'm just going to kind of resize the box a little bit and move that over here. Now, notice how you don't see anything. And that is because I created the text first and then the shape box. So I put the shape box on the very top. So if I move this to order, then to back again, now you can see my text and my shape is working together. Again, I want to align that to the center, which is right up here under the align button. And we want to make that kind of in the middle of the text box. And now we have our date and we have a shape. But on the flyer, I actually had a little yellow highlight on this one. There may be a way to do that with the formatting tools. I haven't really played with that too much. I just usually copy and paste and make a new one, but we can try that real quick and see if you can make a color drop shadow. And it looks like you can, because you can change the color then of the drop shadow. So if I make that the same yellow and then set the distance off, you can see how it's showing up kind of down here at the bottom. Let's make that 60, kind of similar to what we had up here. And then move my text back over to the center of it all. And now we have a little date call out. If I highlight all of that, grab it all together and group it, on the flyer above, the sample one, I have that kind of at an angle a little bit, so it's not quite squared up. So I can click on that. And then I'm going to make sure that I got everything selected here. And if I grab this little kind of added little tail on the box, I can rotate and see how the box is rotating there. So I'm going to rotate that just a little bit to make it angled. And now I've got like a nice little date call out right there for my slide. Again, this works with all shapes. Text boxes have the same thing. If I were to grab my text here, you can see the little tag is right here at the top. I could rotate my text in any way that I wanted it to. For the headline, I'm going to leave it just like that. And that way it's easy to read. Okay, so the final thing I want to do is if I were to print this on a plain white sheet of paper now, everything's going to feel like it's kind of floating. And so I like to either put a little box around it just to kind of contain everything, or in this case, we made like a colored shape. Depending on, how much ink you have, or if your printer doesn't print very good solid blocks, it's up to you, however you want to do it. But what I'm going to do is the same thing. I'm going to click on my shape tool and I'm going to pick a square. And from my margins, I'm going to draw a box using the margin layer or the margin lines. And then I'm going to create kind of this bluish box on the inside. Let's get rid of the outline because we don't need that. And then for here, now this, you can kind of see that I have some weird looking half circle things on my color choices here. And if you choose any of these colors down here, these are solid. You won't be able to see through any of those colors. I wanted this to be really light colored and possibly see-through. And so if you had things in the background underneath the color, you'd still be able to see through it. So in order to get that, you have to create a custom kind of color here. And you can see that me playing around, I've done this a few times. But if you want to do that, you can click on the little plus button to create a custom color for your designs. This works for text, shapes, anything. And I have my numbers already set for this, which is 15205. And you can also click inside this color thing and find one that you like. And let's say you wanted to do a little bit darker green, you can go with that. And then this bottom line is the transparency of that color. You can see how there's a checkerboard underneath. As I slide that down, you can see the sample over here on the left in this little circle starts to kind of fade. So that's telling me this is pretty solid color. This is pretty transparent color. So let's go back to just typing these in though, because I had these already preset for this example. So 15, 235, and then the A stands for alpha, or your transparency. So I want this to be 15% kind of visible. So when I do that now, you can see that it's kind of put almost like a colored transparency over my whole image, which that's not really what I want to do because it kind of makes it look a little sickly. We'll move that to the back by right-clicking on the shape and saying order send to back. And with that, we have a Google Flyer. This is ready to print out, or you can send it to a PDF. So let's go ahead and do that step real quick. So to do that, you just go to File. Down at the very bottom of the File menu is the Print menu. And what we want to do is go to File, Print. And just like any other print document that you do, your options are right up here. I don't want to print all the pages. I just want the second page. So I'm going to choose page 2. And you can see there's my flyer. And you can save it as a PDF, or you can send it off to your printer to print it out. If you're just doing a one-off, then you can print it. If you're making handouts for your students, you can print, it's up to you, whatever you're using this particular design for. Right now, I could save it as a PDF. I'll hit save. It'll give me the choice to save it in a certain location, and then we're off to the races. So that's building basically a document using Google Slides. So Google Slides isn't only for slides. We can do print things with it as well. With that, so we've created a new slide, showed you how to change the format of your slide to go from a slide to a print document. And then we created a flyer using shapes and text and different things like that. And then I showed you how to save as a PDF or to print it out on your printer.
Thank you for watching today's Teaching with Technology Brown Bag session. You can view all Teaching with Technology Brown Bags on the USU YouTube channel under the full ETI playlist. Have a nice day.